Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Aiche,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
this is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's another beautiful day, another great time for us to discuss issues related to business, finance, national development, and the economy. I am Femi Ayodele. I'm glad to be here today just to be your host because our duty is to shape policy and advance development. We hope that as you spend the next 3 hours with us, we'll give you the best of programming, will make your day worthwhile and remarkable. As you know, today's discussion, we're looking at the African Summit, where the president is scheduled to attend that summit. What will be the impact on Nigeria? What will be the benefits? What are the opportunities inherent for Nigeria as a nation? We will look at this and many more. We hope as you join us, you can also be part of this discussion. Don't forget, you can go on our social media platform at Souk News to share your view using the hashtag Early Exchange. Now let's kick the show. Let's kick off the show with news updates, and Africa is standing by to take us around the world.
Femi, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the morning news update on Souk News. I am Alfreda Ambe Bassi. On the news this morning, we begin with the headlines. President Tinubu short break, and when we return, we take the news in full. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu will attend the Saudi Africa and Arab Africa Summit in Saudi Arabia this week to strengthen economic and political ties between Nigeria and the Arab world. Tinubu aims to attract more foreign direct investment and business partnerships to Nigeria and Africa. During the summit, he will engage in discussions with Arab leaders on topics such as trade, counterterrorism, agriculture, infrastructure, and environmental issues. As the chairman of the Authority of Heads of Government, ECOWAS, Tinubu will also advocate for closer integration between the League of Arab Nations and the African Union, particularly in terms of infrastructure and facilitating connectivity through a new high-speed train network. And now the federal government has inaugurated the Kaduna State CNG Conversion Center as part of the government's efforts to address the impact of subsidy removal. The facility aims to convert conventional petrol vehicles into CNG-powered vehicles, providing a cleaner and more affordable energy solution. Chairman of the Presidential CNG Initiative Steering Committee, Zach Adedeji, highlighted Nigeria's commitment to transitioning towards sustainable energy and reducing carbon emissions. The program director of PCNGI, Michael Oluwagbemi, noted that the event marks abandoned significant milestone towards cleaner and more affordable energy solutions, adding that the ceremony represents the realization of the vision for a sustainable future and follows the commissioning of similar centers in Lagos and Abuja. And in a new development, the National Orientation Agency, NOA, says it will soon unveil a national value charter for Nigerians. This was disclosed by the newly appointed Director General of the agency, Lanre Isao Nilu. According to him, the agency has formed a technical working committee, TWC, with members from various sectors to develop a practical and relatable national value concept, adding that in the near future, the agency will unveil a national value charter that resonates with the people of Nigeria. And away from that, the National Population Commission, NPC, says it has allocated approximately 200 billion naira for the upcoming 2023 population and housing census in Nigeria. The executive chairman of the commission, Nasser Kwara, confirmed this during the training ceremony for interviewers for the 2023 Nigeria Demographic and Health Survey in Nasarawa State. Kwara noted that the funds were efficiently used for the procurement of necessary materials, which will not require additional purchases. He stressed the importance of both NDHS and the census in the provision of crucial data for development and planning purposes, particularly in areas such as fertility, family planning, and reproductive health. The Director of Planning and Research at the Federal Ministry of Health, Dr. Chris Isokpunwu, while speaking on the significance of NDHS in the health sector, says the program forms the foundation for delivering essential services. And now the participants at the World Bank Sponsored Center for Innovation, Procurement, Environmental and Social Standards at Joseph's Sarunwa Taka University in Makurdi have been urged to uphold integrity, patriotism and professionalism in order to contribute to the country's and the state's development. The program, funded by the World Bank under the Sustainable Procurement, Environmental and Social Standards Enhancement Project, aims to enhance sustainable human capacity development in procurement, environmental and social standards in both the public and private sectors in Nigeria and the West African sub-region. The graduates were urged to make a positive impact, reduce corruption, and provide mentorship to young professionals as part of their mission to promote sustainable development. The Lagos State government's decision to revert transportation prices within the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority has generated mixed reactions. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has initially announced a 50% reduction in bus rapid transport BRT fares on 2nd August 2023 to reduce the impact of federal government's petrol subsidy removal. However, the agency recently stated that the 50% discount on regulated transport fares in Lagos has been discontinued. Passengers traveling from various parts of Lagos expressed their dissatisfaction, citing inadequate communication about the price change and an increase exceeding the promised 50%. In response to this concern, the bus fare was reduced by over 15% this morning, thereby reducing the challenge of passengers. And now veteran broadcaster, women activist and Iyaito of Lagos, Chief Julie Coker, has called for the revival and resuscitation of the World Festival of Arts and Culture, FESTAC, held last in Nigeria in 1977. She argued that the revival of the festival after 46 years will be a stepping stone in the ultimate revival of the culture and traditions of the Nigerian people. Chief Julie Coker made the call in Lagos in an exclusive interview with Souk News shortly after a courtesy call on the management of the station.
If we can only put all these things behind us, the evil that people have done in the past, people like Julius Caesar, when they were writing all those, when Shakespeare was writing all those things, things like that have happened in the past. We should examine them. The image of Nigeria will come tops. All the stations in Nigeria should get involved and do stories on this question that you've asked me. A very salient question, and I love it so much. That might be able to revive the image of this country.
As a matter of urgency, she appealed to the federal government to set up a committee to look into the ways and means of reviving the festival, pointing out that time was ripe for its revival. The full interview is available on our program, Souk Exclusive. We take a breather and return with more stories when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Speaker of the Kwara State House of Assembly, Engineer Yakubu Danladi Salihu, has pledged the necessary legislative support for the state government to tap into the potential of the cultural and tourism sector. He revealed this at the Ghani Festival of Gwanara Emirate, both the Emir of Okuta and the Emir of Gwanara in Kwara State. While acknowledging the state's government's efforts in utilizing culture and tourism to boost the state's economy, Danladi Salihu urged the people of Kwara to rally behind the governor's vision and support several initiatives to promote culture and tourism. And on the foreign scene, Yoport Holding and Africa Finance Corporation, AFC, have announced a deal with Yoport Holding, which will acquire a controlling 35% stake in the operator of Ghana's Takodi port. While the value of the deal was not disclosed, AFC revealed that it exited its $138 million investment in Atlantic Terminal Services Limited with a double-digit return. This investment marks Youport's expansion into the Africa market following its initial investment in Takodi earlier this year. Youport aims to establish the port as a strategic gateway and a logistics and trading hub for the region. The deal also sets the stage for competition between Youport and DP World, a Dubai-based firm that has been investing in ports across Africa. And a new development, the European Union has announced plans to invest 60 million euros in the rehabilitation and upgrading of Uganda's Nalubali and Chira hydropower plant complex. The investment aims to address the country's financing gap for its aging energy infrastructure and support Uganda's industrialization by providing reliable energy. The complex, located at the source of the River Nile in Jinja, produces approximately 380 megawatts and is Uganda's oldest power plant. The funding will be advanced under the EU's Global Gateway Strategy, aligning with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. And now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Biden administration intends to collaborate with Congress to enhance U.S.-Africa Trade Pact rather than simply renewing it without any changes. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, a trade initiative established in 2000 to foster trade relations with Africa and promote economic development in African countries, provides duty-free access to the U.S. market. It is set to expire in September 2025, and African nations are advocating for an early 10-year extension without alterations to maintain confidence among businesses and investors. Although AGOA has enjoyed bipartisan support from U.S. lawmakers who view it as crucial in countering China's influence in Africa, there are differing opinions on the necessity for updates. And that's all we can take on the morning news updates this morning. But before we go, a quick highlight on major stories in the bulletin. President Tinubu attends Saudi Africa and Arab Africa summits. Federal government inaugurates CNG conversion center for clean and affordable energy. Many thanks for watching. I am Alfreta Ambebasi. Stay with us for more analysis on Early Exchange program.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodun Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Eiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanse.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption. And everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And,
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's time for news analysis, where we review all the major headlines trending today. We'll do better analysis here as far as Soup News is concerned. And not alone, the wise man is here, and I'm being joined by Dr. Idahosa Osamazin, the Vice President of Femi Wash Media Limited. Idahosa, glad to have you join us.
Femi, good morning. A pleasure to be here always.
Yeah, I had to call you the wise man now. As usual. All right, let's start the news analysis from Kaduna State, where the federal government has inaugurated the CNG Conversion Center as part of the government's effort to address the impact of subsidy removal. Since the reality has been here, since subsidy has been removed, Nigerians have been going through hard times. The reality is something the federal government has to do. And statistics have shown that since the removal of subsidy, it has also reduced the number of, the daily consumption of fuel in Nigeria. And now there's a need to break the over-reliance on petrol. And that's why CNG Conversion Center is being inaugurated in Kaduna. Talk to us. What do you think will be the impact of this?
Well, I think it's part of the challenge that we face as a nation in terms of how to respond to issues that affect us. Elementary economics tells us, prices are driven by the forces of demand and supply. Who says that gases are going to always be cheap, as we envisage? The more people patronize gas, the demand increases, the prices will go up. And what happened to petrol? Are people going to live in? All these issues are just stopgap measures to address basic issues. But I think that what is really the most important thing that government should do is to invest in basic transport infrastructure for its citizens. Let there be public buses that are funded by government, manage and run and deliver services, really livable transportation system that even the middle level managers are able to actually use public transportation to commute. That in the longer run will solve the problem.
The idea is also to look at providing alternatives to petrol. Over the years, we've had too much reliance on petrol vehicles. The most commonly used vehicles here in Nigeria is the petrol-powered vehicles. Now, to have CNG, powered vehicle, in addition to what you have, will also be a way to break the monopoly of, reliance on petrol. Apart from that, it's also a way to also create, the transition to clean energy. If you agree with me that the bulk of, the emission comes from, petrol-powered vehicle. So by the time you have the CNG, powered vehicle, it's also contributed to the transition to clean energy, reduces, the kind of emission that comes from petrol vehicle. Apart from the fact that you're also breaking down monopoly, it's important to also bring these two factors together, because as we speak in Nigeria, when you have too much reliance on one commodity, you discover that over time, it becomes a challenge, and that's what we have in Nigeria. Now, these vehicles, these centers are being created, will be created all over Nigeria. The first phase is that of Kaduna. Maybe that caters for the north. I'm hoping, and I think what should be done is to ensure that these centers are created across all the 6 geopolitical zones, whereby it's easier for this conversion to take place. So what it means is, as an average Nigeria, I can take my vehicle to this center to be converted from petrol, to gas, which the cost is also another factor, because Nigeria will also look at how much am I going to pay for this. If you're asking me to convert my petrol vehicle to CNG? What will be the cost of the conversion? Is it going to be free? These are issues that also should be looked at.
Yeah, but that's the exact point that I actually speaking to. Whether we like it or not, a number of people are going to, of course, pay so much to convert their petrol vehicles to CNG, as it were. Even if we have the goal of fighting climate issues or the emission of CO2, removing carbon footprints on our space, I think we can be very more strategic about some of the things we do. So once you have a challenge, and the only way to look at dealing with that challenge is dealing with the symptoms and not looking at the root, is a problem that we face.
So what's the root here?
The root of the problem is that we don't have transportation infrastructure. And that is why people are over-relying on petrol. This is the issue. Now, it's not even vehicles that use petrol alone. We have not been able to solve the issue of the electricity that makes a lot of people to have to use generator to power their offices and services. These are the critical root issues that we should address. We need to invest heavily on infrastructure, road infrastructure. For example, if a man is traveling from here to Abuja, a road that should take him 6 or 8 hours from Lagos, and you are going to spend 14 hours, 18 hours, what are you doing? You are burning petrol, gas, whatever it is. These are the issues that we need to address. That people wake up in the morning, they can enter into mass transit, and they have alternative to driving their own private cars. That's the issue. So I don't need to drive from my house to office this morning. I just go to the bus station or go to the train station, have a decent transport service, come to work, and I'm going. Then it reduces a whole lot of things. And then, of course, even the carbon emission also go down drastically. Now, but because people don't have these alternatives, so they have to necessarily either buy petrol or gas. But my point is simple. The more people come to use gas, is because the demand is not high, and that's why you see the prices down. Once demand increases, as many people convert to gas, what happened to the prices? It will soar. We forget that there were times that we sold petrol here at 11 naira per liter. Is it that memory failed us sometime? There are certain times we're selling petrol at 60 kobo per liter. How does the price go to 600? Those are the issues that we should be looking at as a people, and not taking, have measures to deal with a fundamental problem. That is the point that I'm trying to make.
I agree with you. There's a need to also address, the road infrastructure. Nigerians prefer to, drive their cars simply because of the comfort. If you look at the state of the public transport, you'll be very disturbed at the state of this public transport. Some of them are dirty, not too clean, in poor state. And then if you call yourself, a decent human being, you wouldn't want to, ply those buses, and that's why you resort to using your cars.
That's what I talked about livable transportation system.
Yeah.
Some of our friends who we traveled together to Casablanca about 2 weeks ago, and they resorted to use public transportation instead of taxi, because number one, it was costing costs for them, and two, it was very decent, well organized. And it crisscrossed all the city areas. This is what is required, and this is what government should focus on. That the infrastructure deficit in Nigeria is massive. And then we have to find a way to bridge those gaps. Any little money we can save to bridge those gaps will go a long way, and it will be worth the while, rather than throwing money here and there to fight fire, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, let's move on to the next story, which is the National Orientation Agency says it will soon unveil a national value charter for Nigerians. This was disclosed by the newly appointed Director General of the agency. Lanre Onilu. You know, the new Director General of National Orientation Agency has, you know, disclosed the need to have what we call a national value charter. You know, over the years, the National Orientation Agency has been criticized for non-performance, and somehow you wonder if that agency is in existence in Nigeria, what's their role, what they are doing. But you have a new sheriff in town who say, hey, we're going to unveil new national value. Used to organizations, you know, private organizations having what we call core values, where, you know, you spell out what your core value is, or what your core values are as an organization. Now, on a national scale, the National Orientation Agency is coming up with this idea of making it a national thing for us as Nigerians to have an identity, you know, have what we call national core values. What do you think, Idahosa?
Well, sometimes when we have people come into office, at least we need to see a lot of activities happen. Yes, it's very important that we speak about value issues, because when you look at our nation today, for example, you see that the critical issues that faces us as a people is actually the lack of value, because we don't have value as a people. And because we don't have very sound value, it affects the way we do state businesses. And these are very huge challenges that faces us. And so there's no doubt that we need we need to really reinforce our value system. I don't think it's new values we need. It's to reinforce the old values that we have. The value of integrity. That people know that when they make a commitment, they're duty bound to fulfill that commitment. Value that truth matters. That we mean what we say and say what we mean. This is what we need if we must move up to become like other nations that has developed. Now, without these basic values, we can't go anywhere. But the challenge here is somehow we are very good at pointing fingers at people. Because every time we are thinking about value, all we are looking at the man on the street. The man who is setting the value is not looking at himself. That's where the problem is. That's where the failure comes from. So we've all agreed and said, oh, we want to set some various values at ourselves. Everybody become like every other citizens. Nobody has priority over any. Then, of course, all of us become accessible. That there is no one human being that is superhuman. These are the issues. And this must be demonstrated from the top. From the very top. I was in the neighborhood where the president of Rwanda lives. He lives in an estate in the midst of his people. No special security around. Anybody walk into the estate and walk out. Every first Saturday of the month, Paul Kagame comes out in the estate with the estate people to clean the environment. People have interface with him. They ask him questions about the state. He gives them direct answer. Nobody is blocking him off from talking to the people. Every first Sunday of the week, of the month, he takes a jog on the streets. And the whole Rwanda jog with him. And they come back. Now, so it's just ordinary. The children have no special status. So people can feel, and this is why you see there's a whole lot of people rooting for him. And he says, Every Rwanda is a leader, not just me. So you must practice leadership from your home. And you can see that society is growing, even though it's a very small, tiny island. And I think this is where we need to start. Our leaders are not in touch with the people. If the president is coming, you close the road. Nobody can move. Now, what that does, it creates an aspiration in the heart of people to capture state power. Because, oh, woman cannot be enjoying this privilege. So we can do anything within our power to capture that state power. This is why you see the struggle for state power in Nigeria is so tense that 9 months after our elections, we are not able to get out of the bitterness of losing and winning. Because there's so much that is on the seat of power that a lot of people feel that it is their turn to grab that power and use it for themselves. So this is a problem. So I think this is where the value orientation needs to start from. So that we begin to de-emphasize, these differences or inequality that exists between the leaders or the rulers and the ruled. Now, if that tone can come from on the top, that everybody is simply citizens and nobody is above, nobody is below, then we can be talking of driving national value. Now, if you are telling me that you have a special privilege and I don't have a right to be ambitious to take that office, then you'll be misinforming the public. And I think this is where we need to do. We must demystify leadership. That is the beginning point. Now, when everybody sees that we are all the same, that the children of the president can attend the same school with the children of the very poor, and they can compete in the same sports and do things together, and there is no segregation between us, then of course we can be on the road to actually writing a new chapter of values for our people.
Well, when it comes to value orientation, I think the National Orientation Agency has a lot of work to do, not just, talking about it now. You also have to walk the talk, because too much is given, much is expected. So much has been expected of that agency over the years, but so much haven't been seen. And so this time around, how we expect that they need to rewrite their story. You remember the rebranding project that started at a point in Nigeria where it is today. And so if the National Orientation Agency is thinking of rebranding with the national core values, I think it's a good thing. But like you said, it's not just talking about this thing, making it ceremonious or just unveiling the ceremony. But what's more important is the enforcement. How do you localize it? How do you ensure that citizens comply with these values? I want a situation where you say, you get to anywhere in the world, you introduce yourself as a Nigerian, and people will respect you and say, yeah, you're welcome. But here, when you introduce yourself in other climes, there's also, they form a perception about Nigeria, because some of the activities of our leader, some of the activities of the citizens over the year. So I think there's a need for rebranding, if I may use that word this time around, which I think the National Orientation Agency should make its priority this time around, to ensure that these core values, from top to bottom, every Nigerian, in fact, they unveil it in a way that it resonates with an average Nigerian, if possible, using local languages, so that people can speak their language even with the core values, and they can understand what it means, and they can also implement it at their local level, not just at the federal level. I think this is critically important, like you said. All right, let's look at the National Population Commission. That's another, commission we have to talk about, which has allocated 200 billion naira for the 2023 population analysis census in Nigeria. You're smiling. I'm sure your concern is we've not had census in recent time. And then how do we know how do we know our population? Is that a cause to worry?
Yeah, but for me, I think the real news would have been the plan to unveil the e-portal for civil registration and vital statistics systems that the president will unveil tomorrow, being the 8th of May, where citizens can naturally go to register, and then of course the system validates those basic statistics, and it's easy for us to be able to use that database to plan and develop. You see, when news like this come, people are always looking at the money figure. And then I think that is what is interesting here, that 200 billion is going to be spent on health registration. But I think it's quite fundamental that we do this census. And don't forget that there's a plan that was on ground to conclude at least the first digital census for the nation, which of course had been put on hold at the twilight of the last administration. This would have happened around May, but of course a whole lot has been done. The delimitation of the space has been done, and all that was required just was to mobilize to the field. So these are part of the program that is going to actually constitute the entire bulk of resources that we need to count our people. You see, like we say today, data is life. Data is life. And if we, as a nation, we have not been able to come to that level where we have actual data about everything about us, even including our health status, it's a fundamental problem. And I think this is also very necessary because it also will help in terms of planning your health care system and know where emphasis should be placed, which is the most dominant ailment or sickness that people have. And government will be able to make a plan to addressing those issues. I remember, I think it was in 2009 when the UAE did their own health survey. And then they came out to see that almost every young person in the UAE was obese. And the government saw that obesity was going to be a problem in the future. Because as these children grow up and become 30, 40, then the government will need to be spending more money on issues that has to do with heart condition, hypertension, high blood sugar, and things like this. And so what government decided to do was to introduce a curriculum in the schools, early childhood education on dietary, to teach people what to eat. Now, when you see them now, you see them as slim, and you think, what happened? Government saw the data, and they key into the data to make a plan for the future. And I think that is where we should look at this kind of creativity from the National Census Commission that is good to do a health survey and know what the problems are, so that even those issues that can be avoided by simple instructions, like they say, prevention is better than cure, we could begin to address them, and then really what we spend on healthcare can actually go down in the longer run.
All right. Before we wrap up, let's look at the mixed reaction, trailing the 50% reduction in bus rapid transportation in Lagos, the BRT system, like we said earlier, the removal of fuel subsidy, has taken toll on Nigerians. So earlier, the governor announced, a reduction of 50%, and recently, there was that reduction was discontinued. And from the witnesses, we heard this morning that the prices has even increased. And so it's generating mixed reactions among Nigerians. Like you said, if Nigerians are not in position to use their vehicles, the public transport should be, available and in a good state for them to use. But with the hike in the price now, it's generating a lot of controversy. What's your take on that?
Well, I think when the governor announced the palliative, as it were, it was not going to be a long-term program. It was to cushion the effect that immediate removal of fuel subsidy brought. And so they announced a reduction in the price of the bus station. Now, just yesterday, the price was now brought back or increased to a certain level of amount. And now, as at this morning or so, they've made another reversal in terms of reduction. again, showing that probably the government is also listening to the cries of the people, and see people already started to enjoy that facility. But I think really going forward is to look at it holistically. I know that last month, some of the staff of the BRT went on strike, and they said they were not being paid well. Now we have to balance all this together so that it becomes mutually really beneficial. The bigger problem in our country, which again speaks to our value issues, is the fact that so many things are shrouded in secrecy. Pricings are not transparent. We don't even know at what point companies are breaking even. So to be able to really analyze and to see whether fair rates are charged or not. That's happening in petrol, that's happening in electricity, that's happening even in the public transportation costs. How do we arrive at certain prices? Because there are metrics that we should use to determine what price is reasonable, that one will allow for the maintenance of the facility. Because it's one thing to enjoy a price. Now, when you see some of those BRT now, a lot of them are out of use already. If it were in St. Clair, they would have removed some of all these things from the road. But whether the transport companies have been able to make enough money to replace those buses is another ball game. So yes, it is that people want to enjoy a very cheap rate to transport. But then it has to be reasonable so that you'll be able to maintain the infrastructure. And having used it, other people should be able to also enjoy it. And I think that, for me, should really be the conversation. But we don't know what mechanism is put in place in terms of calculating what is the fair and reasonable cost of transportation. But I think, given what the cost of transportation is as of today, if those buses are using petrol, you will discover that what it will cost to commute from one end of Lagos to another, and look at the volume of petrol that is used. Look at those who are working in the system, who are going to be paid. And if that system is not able to pay its own bill, then of course it becomes a burden on the government. And I have always advocated that the government in Nigeria is carrying too many loads that they are not supposed to be carrying, and therefore they are becoming more and more ineffective. And I think government must be very clear and sincere to people and tell them which area they are able to intervene in their life. Provide good healthcare system, provide insurance for people. And I think the president of Rwanda has made that an insurance policy. Everybody has a health insurance policy. You don't need to just be a public servant. As long as you're in Rwanda, you have a health policy. Now, if we can implement that, that reduces insurance, take a whole lot of risk from the life of people. And I think this is what government should be doing, rather than deliberately getting themselves involved in things that they really don't have business about doing.
You know, the truth is the 50% discounts, was supposed to last for 6 months. But Nigerians, once you're used to something, you just desire for it to continue. And now the reality is, but I'm happy also that the governor has also listened to the plight of the people, reducing it by 15%. So it's something commendable. Let's wrap this news analysis with the advocacy from the veteran broadcaster Julie Coker, where he talked about the need to revive Festac, the one that took place in 1977. It was the first time you had a global union in Nigeria, where Nigeria was put on the global map. And since then, we've not had something similar to that kind of festival. Does it bother you?
Well, it won't bother me, really. It's also depending on what you were pushing. The agenda of Festac 77 actually was to open up Nigeria to the world so that people can come into the country and see how beautiful that we are. And then, of course, we'll be ready to do business with us. And, of course, that would have resulted in a whole lot of FDI. But whether that purpose was actually achieved is a different ballgame altogether. But I think what is important for us is we need a whole lot of strategy, national strategy, about development and the things that we will need to do to really achieve the same goal. You see, there are small things that other people are doing. Take, for example, Paul Kagame in Rwanda had opened Rwanda to all African nations and to all Commonwealth nations. So you get to Rwanda without visa. Call it visa on arrival. And it has zero cost. So you're traveling to Rwanda, and the man is doing some magics in terms of creating a whole lot of ecosystem that people want to see. You see, like they say, charity begins at home. If we want people to come and see our culture, we must be preparing the groundwork for what people are going to see. So this for me is what it is. Yes, Festac was good at the time, it was ahead. But whether we even have a culture to showcase, that is another ballgame, because we are losing track of our cultures. I don't think Gen Zs knows what their cultures are really, and then they will actually be able to participate in such a cultural festival. So these are the issues that we have to look at. We can't bring tomorrow back, definitely. It's looking at the future, what are the things that are going to really make the mark for us as a people, especially looking at our demographics, where you see people between the age of 50 down, 50 upward, represent about 6% of our entire population. So which means most of the people who are the bulk of our population really may not even understand what the culture are in the first place. So what culture are you going to showcase, except that you're asking other people to bring their culture to your place? Yeah, but you know, a lot of people also have some religious connotations to those exercises. A lot of people feel that we started to actually go down when we open our door to all manners of deity, just like Solomon did in the ancient Israel, and brought the nation down. So all these are conversations that people will continue to have. For those who saw it then, it was a whole lot of glory. But how that will resonate with the new generation of people is a different ballgame.
All right, for those who need to know what transpired, during the Festac 77, we had an exclusive interview with Julie Coker, who was there. She was part of the organizers, and she took a prominent role. She had an exclusive interview with Soup News, and you can go on our YouTube platform to check it out to see, what transpired, what happened, and then the need for Nigeria to revive its culture and tourism. And on that note, we'll call it a wrap for this news analysis. Sidauza, I must thank you for spending time with us. You're still here with us.
Thank you, Femi. My pleasure to be here with you today.
All right. So let's go on a short break now. When we return, our major discussion for today will kick off. All you have to do is stay with us.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad to have you join us once again. As you're aware, our obligation on this program is to shape policy and advance development. And today we'll be looking at the Arab African Summit, which is scheduled to take place this weekend. We want to look at the impact for Nigeria. The President Tinubu, has unveiled agenda for that summit, what Nigeria stands to gain as being part of that summit. That's going to be part of our discussion today. And to even fleshing this discussion, Idauza Samuels is still here with us in the studio. Glad to have you join us once again.
A pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with, in recent times, Africa has been of interest to international investors. In fact, Africa is being perceived as the new frontier when it comes to emerging markets. So countries like, Saudi Arabia, the League of Arab Nations, they are taking interest in Africa, most importantly, Nigeria. Let's look at the relationship between Nigeria and these Arab nations. How far has it gone? And then what do you think will be the value, looking at the forthcoming conference or summit, tag the Arab African Summit? Let's start with that.
Well, I think Nigeria and the Arab or Africans and the Arab world were actually cousins, so to speak. We've had very good cordial relationship, especially religion also ties us, and because of those religious ties between the Middle Eastern countries and almost all African countries. So we live together as cousins. So there's not been really any distrust in terms of relationship is being quite fair to a large extent. Yeah, but what has not actually been also taken advantage of is leveraging, the economic opportunities that exist between these two worlds. A whole lot is happening in the Arab world because there's a revolution of a sort that's going on in the Arab world, especially in the core Middle Eastern state. The GCC nations, the 7 nations of the Arab world, they've made substantial progress in recent times in terms of building infrastructure, mastering agriculture, and so many things. Engineering, because if you go to these 7 GCC countries, you see very fantastic architectural pieces of technology. And so a whole lot is happening in this place that we Africans must really have to learn from. Whether it's from Saudi Arabia, ambitious NEOM project to build a city that is powered by only renewable source of energy, which of course is going to go up over $500 billion US, to even now rebranding from being a conservative religious environment to a tourist attraction. And you see massive investment even in football. The Saudi Arabia is not just to be known anymore just for Hajj operations. It should be far, far more than that. And the Crown Prince is doing seriously well in this direction to reposition Saudi Arabia as a tourist destination. And so massive investment is going on, and they're also perfecting their technology. In short, they're also bidding to even hold the World Cup in 2034. And now all these are pulling together to see the direction that these people are actually charting for themselves. Or you go to Dubai, you go to Bahrain, or you go to Oman. They've very perfected technology. So I feel there's so much we can learn from the Arab world, especially Saudi Arabia. Apart from the fact that we're also looking at them bringing money to invest in our economy, but we also need to look at what they have done well. Take, for example, Saudi Aramco is one of the third most valuable company on earth today, with a market capitalization of over $2.158 trillion US. That's huge sum. In 2022 alone, this company made a profit of $164 billion US. Oil and gas. Took advantage of the Ukrainian-Russia war and make huge fortune because of their investment in critical national assets and infrastructure. So all these are things that we can actually learn from. That apart from the fact that we're asking, okay, let's Saudi Aramco, for example, come and invest in our energy sector. Just the way we have privatized NNPC. But they are making massive profits for this state. We need to learn, and there's so much we can learn from the Arab world.
All right, let's look at the objectives of this summit. This Arab African Summit has stated, the objective starts with strengthening the relationship with Africa, especially when it comes to the pressing issues like the issue of security. The last conference was held in 2016, and the organizers feel there's a need to have another kind of summit whereby you strengthen the partnership with Africa. Talk to us. Why do you think it's important to strengthen this partnership at this time, given the realities, in Africa, and the fact that Africa is being sought after now when it comes to global investment?
I think it's important also because you find that how religious radicalism really has made this terrain really prone to a lot of issues. And especially you find that around the Maghreb area where you are seeing a whole lot of radicalization, of people who are protesting. You take it, for example, from Syria, from Iran, from Iraq, and you are having a whole lot of things, and these people are sandwiched. So, of course, they must be very, very conscious and interested in protecting their critical national assets. And many African countries are in the same trails. Take, for example, you also see Nigeria. Look at the Sahel region, from Chad, Burkina Faso to Niger, up to Nigeria, and you see a whole lot of massive insecurity that is not actually allowing us to maximize the full potentials of things that we have put in place. So I think it's right time because, like I said, Nigeria and the Arab world, we are cousins, so we have a similar problem. It's better to sit down and think together and see how you can solve your problem without really necessarily endangering your people. For me, I think we cannot have too many summits, especially if it has to do with security, because without peace and security, there cannot be progress, there will be no development.
Okay, let's look at the agenda of the president. He has unveiled the agenda, for this summit, to look at the essence of the summit, what will be the impact to Nigeria. And the top on the list is to attract foreign direct investment. What impact will this be on the Nigeria economy?
Yeah, of course, definitely it will be very impactful. I've always said, and I will continue to repeat, although a lot of people may not be able to see the picture until it becomes very crystal clear, that our president really understands what he wants and how he wants to get about it. Don't forget that he had made a promise to Nigeria that he was not going to over-depend on borrowing to champion or drive his policies and programs. And one of the areas that is actually looking out for is those partnerships that the nation can enter into with other countries in terms of foreign direct investment. And of course, like he said in one of his campaign tours, that he would not hesitate to see how to get Nigeria into some of all these obligations while we are deferring our gratification to the near future. So, which means what the president is speaking to is the fact that, of course, we need a lot of partnership with these foreigners who will come to build critical infrastructure that they can hold and manage for a time. And after a while, of course, that facilities can become a national asset, as it were. And meanwhile, of course, the nation can also earn some royalty from some of this investment. And I think those are things that, for me, are very critical. Take, for example, if you look at UAE, for example, just one agency in UAE, the RTA, has made so much money using the SALIC or the Clean Road model. They drive in every year over 800 billion from SALIC alone. And so this money is converted to build infrastructure. And given the size of UAE, the infrastructure, for example, is almost getting to a limit because there's nothing more to build. So now, and this money keeps coming in. So there's a need actually to internationalize this money and put it in some other economy where it can actually also be making profit. I want to see that kind of a thing, that of course that the president empower, for example, RTA in the UAE, for example, to do some road network here that can actually be SALIC, clean roads. And then they put their toe on it. But that will also involve us as a people needing, therefore, to put in a whole lot of infrastructure in place, especially in terms of our vehicle registration, so that people who use those clean roads or those clean facilities should be able to actually pay for those services. And then that will help a great deal. It will help reduce the deficit in terms of infrastructural gap. We can partner with Saudi Aramco to help us develop our gas deposit here in Nigeria, which is also not, which is under-tapped at the moment. So all these conversations, I feel, are possible. There are things that government can actually get into to see we bring in because at least you are dealing with your cousin, they are much more open, they are more frank in terms of conversation than most Western and Asian countries.
Let's look at the area of counterterrorism, because it's part of the agenda enlisted by the president. Now, looking at the fact that these countries, Arab nations, they seem to have the same history or similar history when it comes to the issue of terrorism. What do you think would be the likely impact of this kind of economic ties between Nigeria and this League of Nations when it comes to the issue of counterterrorism? And what do you think would be your expectation as the president heads to this summit to be his recommendations when it comes to the issue of tackling counterterrorism?
Yeah, but I think some countries within the Middle East really have been able to actually deal substantially with the issue of terrorism. So for me, really, like I said, it's not just about the money coming in, it's also the lesson to be learned in this summit, to see how they have been able to use technology to actually drive to secure the environment. Yes, we know some nations around are having those challenges, but it's not almost all the nations, because there are a lot of people within the Arab world that has been able to actually build a very formidable security architecture that is overseeing their environment, and they are living safe, and investment is coming into that region. So we can learn from that as a nation. And then, of course, we can also leverage our expertise in this area and see how and who built what system and what we can benefit from it. And I think that our president is speaking frankly, like he keeps saying everywhere he goes, that the doors are open. And but for me, security is critical to national survival, because without peace and development can happen. So we need peace, we need security for development to take place. Even the man who's going to bring in his money to come and invest in your economy had to be very sure that, number one, the investment will be safe. It has to be also very sure that there won't be policy somersault, that you bring in your money here today and then tomorrow is trapped. So this is the challenge that the delegation of Mr. President definitely will face, to be able to make a business case for why the Arab world will need to come to Nigeria for support. Don't forget that many people have the perception that Nigeria is very corrupt, especially its political class. Now, the president also has a burden to demonstrate that he does not belong to that class of corrupt politicians, that the resources that is going to come into the nation is going to be used widely and prudently for the purpose for which it is meant, that all the lacunas, all the barriers to trade are going to be removed so that people can have free flow and outflow of investment. Now, all these assurances the president must need to put on the table, and this will be the basis of the negotiation. That if somebody is believing that government is sincere and is operating with high level of integrity and is willing to depart from the old course, then people will be willing to put and support you. So this is where we find ourselves, and this is what the government will need to sell. So really it's going to be a marketing activity for the president. And like I've said, he has demonstrated that in the few outings he has done, especially to India and to the United States of America during the UNGA, that he is the first and number one salesman for Nigeria. So I am also trusting that he's going to set Nigeria on well at this summit.
Let's look at what Nigeria stands to gain in the area of agriculture, because it's part of the agenda, listed by the president to also seek investors, when it comes to Nigeria's agri sector. What kind of collaborations are you expecting, and what kind of impact will this summit have on the agri sector in Nigeria? And do you feel whether it contributes significantly to Nigeria's GDP?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge benefit for us, especially looking at the environmental challenge that faces both sides. The Arab world are basically desert area. And if agriculture can prosper there, then of course we must learn to actually acquire that technology that causes to blossom vis-a-vis what is happening, especially in the northeastern part of Nigeria that constitutes a larger chunk of our land size. So I think there's a whole lot we can learn in terms of how they have been able to actually power their agriculture. So for me, you keep hearing learning, because I think the learning for me is much more important than the money coming. Because once we can learn the right lessons and do what is right, I think Nigeria has the capacity really to prosper, as it were. Although, like somebody said recently, we are not, we don't have scarcity of ideas. What we have always lacked is the political will to drive success. We know what to do. But all is, people say is, let's get to that point in terms of our national conversation that we all make up our mind and say, let's do what is right. I think we can actually make it. So I like the way the president put it at the UNGA summit. African nations are not to be pitied. All African nations seek is collaboration. In short, as a matter of fact, the world cannot survive without Africa.
Let's look at, in this context, the president will also be attending the summit in the capacity as the chairman of ECOWAS. And the president is trying to say he's in position to also ensure that Nigeria regains its position as the giant of Africa, its identity. What do you think the president needs to do at this kind of forum, or taking advantage of this forum, for Nigeria to regain its identity and also regain its position as the giant of Africa, looking at the fact that he's presently the chairman of ECOWAS?
Yeah, but that's the point I made earlier on. You see, the Gulf countries have come together and they have consolidated their collaborations. And their relationship is so tight. Take, for example, at the last World Cup, Oman was hosting, and there were 15 flights daily from UAE to Oman to complement the infrastructure gap. In short, you will think that it was UAE that were hosting the World Cup. The hotels were all booked out. This is a collaboration that's happening between the GCC countries. Just like you have the European Union. One visa takes you into EU. If you have a permit into UAE, you can move around the 9 GCC countries. So they have been able to form this bond. And so they are all growing together. They are becoming a model to each other. And I think ECOWAS needs this. And as the chair of ECOWAS, Nigeria must be able to pioneer this brotherhood within the ECOWAS region. Again, for me, it's a learning for ECOWAS to see what is happening in the Gulf region and how these people have been able to forge alliance and de-emphasize politics and prioritize economic growth and development for the region so that one nation is not offloading its problem to another. This is where ECOWAS named really. That even though we say we have ECOWAS common passports, but our walls are still blocked against each other. There are no network of infrastructure connecting us. So you can drive straight from UAE to Oman, to Qatar. They are all connected. They are mobilizing resources together to grow the region and make it significant and powerful. So I think this engagement again will also afford the sub-region, ECOWAS, to really rethink and see how we can forge that kind of a bond between us, where we can trade with ourselves, where we can relate with ourselves, where a Nigerian will not find a difficulty doing business in Chad or Benin, or Benin person have difficulty doing business in Nigeria, where we can leverage our critical infrastructure, areas where we have comparative cost advantage, and see how we can grow a big regional market that can actually go to the world stage with one voice. That's critical, and I also hope that that learning, we can also learn from what's happening in the Arab region and see how we can also replicate it here and form a huge voice. Because what that will mean is that if Africa is the ECOWAS sub-region is actually able to speak with one voice, especially with Nigeria being the most populous and the big brother within the region, that also will advance our status at the United Nations and other institutions globally.
All right, let's look at the missing links now so that Nigeria as a nation will learn some lessons. You look at the relationship between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is dated back as 1960. And over 60 years after, it seems not to have translated to something you can think of. You've had series of presidents who have made series of collaborations, international collaborations, economic ties in the past, but that's not translated to proper economic growth, and development. Now, what are the missing links over the years? You've had an opportunity to learn from nations like Saudi Arabia, the League of Arab Nations, who predominantly are deserts, but have taken advantage of their environment, to maximize gains and, make it better than the way it used to be. Why it's Nigeria? Why is it been difficult for Nigeria to learn these lessons and take advantage of these economic ties and international collaborations?
Well, for me, like somebody said, culture will yield strategy for a breakfast any day, any time. And I think these are the issues that we have to look at, where we have to be deliberate in building a national image. Thank God we also had reference the move by Onilu to see how we revive our national value. It's also very critical, because when you're saying one thing and what you're doing is another, nations become suspicious. And I think that's the real issue. So for these ties and relationship to work, you see, the person who is trying to help you must see you as a person of integrity. Like they say in my village, is the person that they are feeding that puts his mouth closer to the hand. And I think we have a lot to do as a nation. If you keep breaking international contracts, for example, and you have to go to do plenty of legal battles, it reduces your credibility I was speaking with somebody recently from the Ministry of Justice, and he was talking about how many pending cases, litigation cases, that we face. Thank God we just recently came out of the trouble of the P&ID case, which was supposed to take about 11 billion from our coffers. Now, these are the real issues. So if you can't stick with your covenant, nobody will want to do business with you. So if we must leverage the opportunities, like they say, he who goes to equity must have his hand clean. And don't forget, there's so much that has also been said about our judiciary, which according to Lisa Agbakoba recently, is the most undemocratic of the three arms of government. And there's a whole lot of all manners of perception about our judicial system and the ability to get justice from within. People have perception that your judiciary is so corrupt, so you can't get justice from it. And don't forget that when you sign contract or international contract, you're doing so based on the law of your land. Now, all these issues are the things that we will need to look at. We must need to clean our home. We must need to do the needed reforms in the judiciary, in the legislature. We need a lot of work on our national image and perceptions. Don't also forget that a lot of people who have traveled for Hajj before to Saudi Arabia had also had to breach security in those countries. And in some cases, you see a row between the Nigerian and Saudi authority. So people are detained and not allowed to go because of the behavior that is shipped overseas. So we must get to that point today to say, it's a new dawn. We are reinventing ourselves as a people. We are changing our approach to living. And now you can come and see what we are doing at home. And I think that is the thing to really say. Come and see what we are doing at home. That is the best sales or marketing anybody can do. Say, come and take a look at it. But for us to get to that, a whole lot needs to be done at home. So I think this is where government really needs to sit down. That it's easy for you to sign MOU with a nation, but it does not translate into economic advancement or progress for the nation until it's executed. And the only thing that will make this execution possible is when you can demonstrate commitment that the person who is coming is going to make profit, that you are not going to interfere with pricing or how profits are repatriated or how cash comes in. So all those things is what we need to define as a people. So like they say, charity will always begin at home. So if we don't start at home to put our things right, and this is why the president, anywhere he goes, he says, oh, the very day we started, one of the things that has been ailing us, which is subsidy, we have said it's gone. We have allowed floating regime for our currency. CBN is allowing people to do business and take their money back. And of course, the current CBN governor has demonstrated this recently, where all the backlogs of money owed to international contractors and business partners were paid out. And I think all these things are building a whole lot of confidence in the system from the international community point of view. So I'm hoping and trusting that The president will sell the nation well. And then this time around, it will not just be like they call it a jamboree. It will be effectual in terms of the economic progress and advancement that this trip will bring to our country.
All right. Let's take a breather now, and when we return, Idauza will talk to us about what the president needs to do more to take advantage of the African, summit enlisted for this weekend. Stay with us.
Whenever your mind and your body are not together in any place, on anything you're doing, you can never be optimal. Why do some people excel way beyond expectation? Some just cut it, and some fall way behind. And I think it's not that some were born more intelligent than others. It's the attitude that one brings to whatever they're doing. Whatever you're doing, if you are not fully engaged in mind and body, then you are not optimally imbibing. You want to go to the movies. You start getting ready at home, but your mind is at the movies. So you get to the movie only to realize that you've forgotten your movie ticket at home. Now that you're at the movie, a movie of 2 hours, 1 hour and a half into the movie, your mind is to the next place, outside the movie. So before the movie credit starts rolling out, everybody is standing up and blocking your view and everybody is rushing out. You are in a training and you have your phone beside you. As it's beeping, you are checking it and you believe that you are listening and imbibing. You are not fooling anybody, you are fooling yourself. Because you are imbibing nothing. You cannot serve two masters. Sometimes the usage of time is also important. When we wake up in the morning, what do? Significant people wake up in their most productive mind. They solve a problem, they take in creative items, or they write something inspirational. Now, when you wake up and you are at the beck and call of reaction, you read a mail, you react to it. You see a WhatsApp message, you react to it. You react to social media posts. You are not making the optimum use of your most creative energies at the most creative time of the day. When you wake up in the morning, I would say, do something inspirational, imbibe something inspirational, write something inspirational, solve a big problem in your mind. Nothing is going to fall down if you don't check your emails and your WhatsApp until 10 o'clock. Put the phone away, not inside, and check it again at 12 o'clock. Put it away, not inside, check it again at 2 o'clock, and check it again at 4 o'clock. There was a time when I was growing up when all we had were landlines. And it's only when you are at the phone and it rings that you pick it up, and nobody died. Be more assertive with your time. Make the most of what you're doing. Wherever you're doing, whatever you're doing, be there fully in mind and body, and see how significant you will be.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge, ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, if you're just joining us, you have no cause to worry, because we're still here for you, and we're looking at the Arab African Summit, which our president is enlisted to be part of that summit. You're going to have head of states coming from League of Arab Nations coming together to form economic ties. We've been looking at what would be the benefit for Nigeria and what our president needs to do to take advantage of this forum to launch the identity of Nigeria and to ensure that Nigeria improves when it comes to foreign direct investment. We still have Idauza here in the studio and is rightly here to provide more analysis on the topic. Glad to know you're still here with us.
My pleasure always.
Great. Now let's look at what the president needs to do, looking at foreign direct investment. The essence of a forum like this is to seek international investment to improve the FDI for Nigeria. Looking at the statistics, the second quarter, the figure released for the second quarter of 2023, the foreign direct investment decreased by $73 million US dollars. Now, let's dwell on what the president needs to do this time around, because you said charity begins at home. What does he need to do locally to ensure that you attract more foreign direct investment into Nigeria?
I think I've already alluded to some of the issues that the president will need to really need to deal with. It's funny, I was talking with a friend recently from Kigali, and he said to me that the biggest problem Africans have is the fact that we speak too badly about ourselves outside. And this is unfortunate. And those perceptions have to change. And I think that's the starting point. Having frank conversations, even from at home. There are a whole lot of narratives that are bandied outside there, many of them that are not right. But of course, because they are coming from media and some people who are perceived to be credible in quotes, people are tended to believe that that's what the truth is. And so this is what we need to do. We need an overhaul of our image and perception to the outside community. And these are to be demonstrated by the way we live, by the way we do things. We need to demonstrate to the international community that the nation is safe and government is in control. Because the feeling out there tend to portray the non-state actors too powerful for the government to handle. That's the issue. Take, for example, in the 5 southeastern states, no state actors ask people to stay at home 1 day of the week. And of course, the governors of those states had nothing to do about it. Absolutely nothing. Now, how do you convince somebody that if they bring an investment into that region, for example, that one man will not wake up and say, this company cannot work and it will not work, and state will not be able to do anything about it? So we must be able to guarantee some sense of safety and security for lives and for investments. That's the starting point. So that's what government needs to do, to demonstrate that it has a willpower to get the state working and running. You are having some bandit that you are going to negotiate with, and they are asking somebody to come and put resource there or build a factory. So it's easier for the Chinese, for example, to take the gold and process it somewhere where the factory will be secured than put it in that place where somebody will come and tomorrow they can throw a grenade on it and the whole thing blow. So that sense of security, we need to create it. It's important. It's important. No matter what you say or what you do, the people need to come in and say, so I still make reference to Paul Kagame when he started. And the first thing he did was the open Rwanda policy. Open the frontiers and said, everybody in the world come to Rwanda, come and see. And people came to Rwanda and they saw that they have overcome their problems, their division. And so the credibility of the international community on Rwanda is very high. Almost all World Bank program in Africa today, or training and capacity building, are all done in Rwanda. Because he has demonstrated that when you come to Rwanda, you feel safe. Life is 24/7. Nobody is afraid of being attacked when you're in Kigali. The borders, the roads, the whole place are lightened up. People drive any time in the night. So this is the ecosystem that needs to be created for other people to bring their money to your economy. As a salesperson, you can tell me, oh, this camera can do X, Y, Z. All I will just be waiting is to say, demonstrate it, that the thing you say it can do it, will do it. Now, if the camera is not performing, you won't expect me to buy it. So we can do the talking, the bilateral talking, to say we are ready. But then, of course, there must be concrete evidence that we are changing narrative. And it's not just about the president alone. And I think it's also beyond the president. Even us as citizens, the feelers that are gotten from us is terrible. The impressions that even the diasporans have of us as a country will not even make foreigners to want to bring their money in here to do business. Because they create a sense of fear in the heart of whoever wants to do business with you. Because it's actually not government to government. It's B2G we are talking about here. So, if we're going to go forward, I think all Nigerians will need some sense of patriotism. We should be guided about our utterances, especially in the media. And you see very high-profile Nigerians, people you think that they should know, denigrating the nation in front of international media. And you think that will not impact on what people come to do with you. So I think that is the area where a lot of people say to President Tinubu after the victory at the Supreme Court that he has to be magnanimous in victory. So we are not a zero-sum game nation where winners take all and the loser lose all. So once we are able to share, we will engender trust. And once that feeling of trust is seen, a whole lot of things will get right. And that will need to really go down. I usually tell people, I don't have anything particularly about federal character principle, for example, to ensure national spread. But how that policy is implemented is a problem, which seems to be driving mediocrity and does not foster national competition. I was asking somebody recently, if I have a son who wants to go into King's College, for example, and he writes exams with another fellow from Kogi State or from Borno State, and they write the same exam, and he scored 200, and he's denied admission. And the chap from Borno State scored 38, and he gained admission. How are you going to explain to that child that we are the same? This is a problem. So we must be able to set national benchmark on some certain things. If you will need to leave the vacancy until they are able to show up to fill it, leave it. But when you encourage mediocrity in the name of national balance, you create feelings among people. And this is why you hear people talking about marginalization. So government need to be real sensitive to the tones on the street and see how we can drive a narrative that everybody feels safe and secure. Everybody feel that they belong to this entity called Nigeria. Once we start to drive that narrative, even from the school system, people will be able to see that, oh yes, we are one nation, we are driving one agenda. Let's make our process transparent enough. Access, equal access. We know human needs are insatiable, but the means is also limited. Everybody has a sense of that. But if people have a sense of fairness to national assets, then, of course, they will know that, oh, I didn't qualify. I'll try the next time. But when somebody seems to be favoring another over another person, then there's going to be a problem. But like I said, from day one, the tone has to start from on the top.
All right, the tone has to start from the top, knowing fully well that leadership, everything rises and falls
on leadership.
On leadership. All right. What a way to wrap up this discussion, Idahosa. Thank you so much for sharing your brilliant thoughts on the issue of the Arab African Summit. All right. We'll go on a short break now. We're still here on Early Exchange, but when we return, the discussion will be on crude oil production in Nigeria. Do you think oil has been a blessing or a curse to Nigeria? You have the privilege of sharing your thoughts on our social media and YouTube page, and that will happen after this short break. Stay with us.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million and...
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Africa in extension. Since oil was discovered in Nigeria in 1956, it has been a controversial subject. It has influenced Nigerian economy since then, and it has been the mainstay of Nigerian economy. Will you agree if someone says oil has been a blessing or a curse? Well, it's relative, depending on the angle you're coming from. And now we want to look at the local refinery of oil in Nigeria. What has been the issues over the year, what Nigeria needs to do to ensure that local refinery of petrol becomes something that has to be done quickly. And I'm here, and I'm joined here by Chuks, who is one of our in-house analysts. Chuks, glad to have you join us on the table.
Thank you very much, Femi. Good morning, and welcome to Early Exchange.
All right.
Our Early Exchange.
Great to have you inducted into the team. Like we always say, Early Exchange is getting bigger and better, and that's why Chuks is here. And Dr. Idahosa is still here with us to look at the critical issue for the segment. Idahosa, glad to still know you're still here with us.
I am here.
Always been patriotic as usual.
We try our best to be true Nigerians and make this country work for everybody.
That's great. I'm proud of that. So let's look at the issue of oil. Petrol was discovered in Nigeria in 1956. That was in Bayelsa State. Since then, it's been the mainstay of Nigerian economy, where you have a shift from agric, which used to be the mainstay. Now, I'm going to start with Chuks. Over the years, we've been able to, take a shift from agric to oil as the mainstay. Will you agree? Has it been a blessing or a curse?
Oil has been a blessing to us. It's not a curse. It's mismanagement by human beings that is giving us issues, but oil has been a blessing to us. It has funded our budgets over the years. It has developed the country. Abuja was literally built on oil money. Part of Lagos was literally built on oil money. Then we'll say Ibadan was built on cocoa money. To God be the glory. Oil is a blessing. It's the people managing it and the way we've gone about it that is the issue.
All right. Idahosa, let me take this to you. At the inception, Nigeria, had about 4 refineries, and if you look at the capacity, at inception, they were at, optimal level. But as we speak, they're not performing up to standard. In fact, the one in Port Harcourt, in Warri, they are under rehabilitation. Now, talk to us, what went wrong over the years when it comes to the management of petrol in Nigeria or crude oil in Nigeria?
Well, I would love to have taken it from the point of view where you asked that there was a shift from the agrarian economy to the oil economy. And I think it wasn't a shift, so to speak. And I think Nigerians must come to terms with this reality. I've had this conversation with a lot of intelligent people, especially economists, who believe that oil had been a cause, that we moved out of agriculture because we found oil. And that was really not completely true. What is true, as far as I'm concerned, and also based on experience, is the fact that our inability over the years to add value to things nature has given to us had always been the problem. I like to share this very funny example. As a young chap, our region was known for rubber, and we tap rubber. And I remember with some nostalgia, while growing up as a child, even in the primary school, go to tap rubber. And on a Sunday morning, when the middlemen come to buy the lumps, we are very big boys, and we were enjoying life. We didn't know where oil was. And that was our oil, was bringing money into our pocket. Until all of a sudden, as we were growing up, entering the secondary school, we discovered that they were buying and there were no remittances. And then this story came and they said, oh, the last one they bought is in Sapele, they have not shipped it. It was when I grew up and I came to realize that what actually happened was the fact that the Western countries developed a synthetic product to rubber because there were a whole lot of things that were actually happening with the rubber and some part of these things even was the corrupt nature of our people because somehow people make lump and they put sand in between stone so that it can weigh heavy. And now this was destroying the machines that they were using in processing this rubber.
Causing impurities.
Yes, impurities. So sometimes when they come to buy those days, they will use knife to cut it to be sure that there were no sand inside. But some people were also loading some woods inside just to increase the weight and earn more money. Now, this was a problem that the white people who were buying the lumps were having to deal with, apart from the fact that the prices were skyrocketing. And then, of course, they found what was authentic to be used. And at that point, what do we have? We couldn't sell lump. And our parents couldn't leave the trees to be standing. So they cut down the rubber plantation to plant cassava.
Wow.
Now, I don't think any researcher had come to my village to ask us why we stopped tapping rubber.
What happened to your rubbers?
Or what happened to them. So these are the narratives that we carry, especially with our lady intellectuals. And I think the same thing happened with cocoa and granules. You remember those days you were growing up as a child, you hear granite oil. Do people talk about granite oil now? We talk about vegetable oil. Because we started to blend kernels to produce vegetable oil. So what do you think happened to the granite industry? The granite farm? It will not be as profitable as it used to be. We used to drink beverages, cocoa beverages. Now almost all the things you drink now, they are all synthetic. Cocoa. Now all these things affected trade. So farmers were not getting the value. So they are looking for where to actually get more value. So people didn't move from farm to oil. People could not farm in some cases because what they were producing, there were not enough market for it. But on the other ground, you also saw that, especially in the oil-bearing region, come to the Niger Delta, for example, I did a complete study of NDTC work in the 9 states of the Niger region Delta in 2006. And it was amazing, the finding that as at 2006, where people were buying sachet water here for 10 naira, it was only 20 naira in Bayelsa. Because number one, they can't drink the borehole water. It wasn't clean. Number two, there was also this acid rain that was spoiling their roofs. In short, those iron roofing sheets, if they put it in 6 months, the acid rain has spoiled it. So that's the increasing cost for the villagers. Many of the people who were riverine people who were used to fishing, oil spillages into the waters made it difficult to even find fish in the water. So their business also was crumbled by exploration. So to that extent, you say, oh, for some people, especially those in the Niger Delta area, it was like a curse. Because their whole ecosystem changed. The things that they are used to is no longer possible. They can't do farm anymore. because of the effect of the spillage of oil. So to that extent, you can say it's a cause. But if we take the narrative from Chuks, that Abuja was built and we are seeing bridges all over the places, it will be a blessing. But for the bearing community, the things that they have to suffer in terms of health, in terms of economic deprivation, it cannot be seen to be a blessing to them. Other people may have been enjoying it. That's on the one hand. But coming to the question of the refineries, I think, again, you look at it from the culture of maintenance. And I don't like using this word. But again, going back to the value system of our people, I was talking to a friend of mine on Sunday, just to give you a kind of a case study of what is in my heart. He took his vehicle to a mechanic to fix. And then he was supposed to change the part, and they gave him money for a part. And the man said the money was too expensive, that he knows people who sell parts, he will go and bring the part. And he said as he was going to go and bring the part, before he came, the pipe that was connecting the hose to this thing, the boy has broken it. So even if when he brought the part, he could not use the vehicle. And he said he was so mad all throughout that Saturday. And he was telling me on Sunday, I said, look, that man, for breaking that my pipe, he will not fix that thing. I have to take it to somebody else to go and fix it. Now, this is a tragedy in our nation. And this thing is widespread. You can't give your vehicle to a mechanic to repair. You have to stay. If you ask somebody to drive your vehicle from here to Ibadan to go and drop something, if it's a vehicle using diesel, the driver will sell half of the diesel on the road. Now, all these things have affected the maintenance of our critical infrastructure. And that's why you see over the years, we have put so much money to fix this refinery, and this money gets into private individual pockets. Shortly jobs are done, and the refinery cannot really generate value. And now, they've now become all obsolete. Technology has overtaken them. And it's also unfortunate that our school system is not able to produce the adequate technology that can actually refine this product or to build a modern day refinery that will not be harmful to its environment.
Let me continue from where you started.
Okay, great.
I will still say that oil is not a cause. Because if I follow all you've said, you are still boiling down on the same thing. Human error, human management, human greed. So for everything that's happened in the Niger Delta, it's not the oil that caused it, but the human beings that are supposed to do the right thing are not doing the right thing. So we are the cause, not oil. Oil is a blessing. There are several countries that have oil, even those that live in the desert, that they didn't just get oil, they turned the desert into a farm, and they are producing. And some of them, we are buying grains from them. So how is it a cause?
Yeah, but that
is the human beings.
No.
It's the human beings.
Yes, we are talking in human being. Mm-hmm. You're also looking at the level of your advancement. Don't forget that when Obasanjo came to power first time in 1976, one of the critical steps that was taken was the indigenization policy, which was actually to convert these basic assets of foreigner to Nigerian managed. Now the question,
what stopped it?
No, it was taken. Now the question was, from 1976 to date, did we really have the competence to drive this sector? Did we have the right technology to drive this sector such that this kind of things we're talking that is happening in overseas, where people have the right technology to drill oil such that the environment is preserved? Did we have these things? These are the things that we are suffering. So it's really not as if it's purely man-made. It's the fact that the level of our development as a people, there are some certain key policy issues that we cannot take. And once we follow that route,
why can't we take
we get into that trouble.
Why can't
so
we take
what
those
we're saying,
policies?
we tell ourselves that we have the capacity to do it. And of course, you cannot do to the extent to which your capacity can drive you. Now, this is what is happening. Oil spillage, I don't think it's deliberate.
Sometimes it's deliberate. Some few years ago, last year, a ship was intercepted by the Navy. In order for them to escape, they abandoned the ship and leaked the oil right in this country.
All right. Let me take the discussion to Chuks now, so that it's getting more interesting, and I like that. So let me have your narrative. Now, at inception, we had 4 refineries, and we still have them. They were producing up to like 4.5 million barrels per day. Joint capacity, looking at the 4 refineries. But as we speak, it's less than 1.2 million barrels per day. What do you think led to this inefficiency?
He has already told us what
No, I want your own view.
The thing is this. The thing is this. When you bring in a technology you can't use, and the government is not deliberate, as in intentionally deliberate, in either acquiring that technology by money, stealing that technology directly, or making sure that your people are the ones operating it, then you have issues. You have issues. It's everywhere, from Ajokuta to the glass mill down to the refineries. Who were those that were directly involved in setting up the refineries? Who were those that were directly involved in maintenance? A lot of those things were still contract staff, expatriates. Then what happens to your own local people? Let me give you an example. In Texas, families run oil companies. And it must not be a big thing. It might just be a single rig. And it's owned by a family. And they make returns or taxes to the government. The same thing in refining. We mustn't go by the way of Dangote. That is an exceptionally good project. But we mustn't go by the way of Dangote. Right now, we have modular refineries coming. As long as they can refine 1,000 to 40,000 barrels per day, that's okay. So we can have all these modular refineries and have people do it. We have universities across that entire oil block location. Of what use are those universities to us if they can't produce or give us the science to refine oil? I don't know if I'm making sense. Of what use are those universities? PTI currently have a modular refinery, no matter how small it is. So why can't they share that technology across board to the universities across that place? So these are things I think government should focus on. Make it a force. We must sell Nigeria. And how can we sell Nigeria? Technology is where we are right now. We are having fuel issues. You said something the other day. You said if we can take away the amount of dollar we spend importing fuel, half of our problem on dollar pressure or naira pressure is gone.
Yeah.
What's your take? There are people who argued since the technology is obsolete, you've been spending money on these refineries for years. Some are arguing that, okay, it's high time they are sold.
Yeah, but I don't think selling them is a problem. I've always had opportunity to have conversation with people in the public sector. And the last conversation I was having with them, especially in the area of procurement. Today, in supply chain management, there's what they call value engineering, which is very important. That if nations are going into purchases with other nations, you sign a service level agreement with the supplier to tell the supplier, yes, you are going to supply me this technology, I'm going to buy it. But as part of service, you are going to rent that to me. You are going to train my people to be able to maintain this facility without recourse to you. They call it value engineering. And that happens in global purchasing. And many times when we sign agreements with people, which again go back to our value, is the fact that an individual who is signing that agreement with his pecuniary or her pecuniary motives will not factor the national interest into it. This is the real problem. Take, for example, we just mentioned again this morning the P&ID case. The person who facilitated that business that would have cost Nigeria for 11 billion US dollars was only given 100 million naira to sign off his nation.
Which year was that?
This is the challenge.
So if we calculate by dollar rates now, that 100 million has depreciated.
Oh yes, in value really. That was in 2009.
2009.
2008, 2009,
like
when this case started.
40% of what?
Of what it was. So this is the real problem. So I don't think that we don't have the capacity to run refineries or to run critical national infrastructures. I just made mention of Aramco, Saudi Arabia oil petroleum company.
But
their profit alone last financial year, was 164 billion US dollars.
Their value system is way ahead
now,
of
that is the point I'm making. So it's not that public cannot manage infrastructure. What our problem is our cultural values that does not really support national patriotism. We are not patriotic people.
Like generalization?
I'm generalizing. Nigerians are not patriotic.
Maybe some.
We only mount patriotism. We mount patriotism as long as it favors us. If it is not favoring you, you use your mouth to denigrate the nation. We are not patriotic people. We only think about us. Me and my family. As long as it's benefiting me, oh, it's right. If it's not benefiting me, it's wrong. That's not patriotism. We need people who will be able to speak truth on issues. How do you know somebody who is patriotic? You know him by the kind of value he holds. And this is where, again, consequences for actions had to be really emphasized. There's what they call
enforced.
There's what they call the fraud triangle. Fraud triangle says fraud happens if there is a pressure and of course there's an opportunity. I am under pressure. The money is in my hand. Now I need the last leg of the triangle, which is rationalization. If I eat it, what happens? Now if the weight of the consequence is not heavy compared to the benefit that is accrued from what you are taking, people will go ahead and become corrupt or fraudulent.
And help themselves.
Yeah, so this is the issue. So there's always a pressure. And what has this pressure been is that those who work in public office, they are not paid enough. They are not well paid. And because they are not well paid, and somebody who is not well paid, you put money in his hand. Like my friend told me very recently, that there's a way you design a system, an institution, that the institution will make the Pope to become a thief, even if originally he does not want to be a thief. That is the kind of system we run, and this is the real problem. So you cannot give somebody who is counting your national money and is seeing billions, and you are paying him peanuts. Take, for example, our National Assembly. You know, that's one of the critical conversations that we're all having. We don't know how much they earn. But we do know that those are the upper chambers by what Ranfac has given to them, that every month they are supposed to be taking 1.3 million naira per month.
1.3 million?
Yes. That's their salary.
Basic.
In a month. That's what is given to them. Now, you have a $600 billion economy, and your president is earning 3 million naira in a month.
Officially or unofficially?
Officially.
Okay.
All right.
Now, this is an issue. Whereas the MD of Zenith Bank or GT Bank is anytime times that amount. How do you really expect that this person who is keeping this your coffers will be patriotic to your cause? Now, this is a conversation we need to always
I don't
have.
want us to deviate from the topic. We're looking at local production.
No, but what the picture I'm trying to paint is a natural picture of why it has been difficult to really manage our refineries.
But those in that sector are paid well.
What you mean paid well is in quotes, is relative.
All right, Chooks, let me put it to you. The issue of modular refineries has been on the table.
Okay.
What impact do you think this will have on local production of crude oil in Nigeria? Talk to us about it.
The impact will be felt if, one, we don't need 5, we don't need 10. Throw it open. Typical example of what happened with telecommunications. If you remember very well, it was a problem making a call within Nigeria, talk much of outside. People would travel out from outside Lagos to Lagos just to make a call. Then the GSM came. Initially, how much was SIM card? After a few months, how much is SIM card? Now they will dash you a SIM card. I don't know if you understand. Same thing with pricing. From 50 naira per minute, whether it drops a call or it doesn't drop a call, you pay the 50 naira. What is happening now? So throw that place open. Why the government doesn't want to do that? Well, they know best. There are issues, yes, but with time, they should throw it open. If I can refine 1,000 barrels per day, give me a license, if I am qualified, if I have the capacity to do it. If the next person in Agbo can do the same thing, if a community can do it, I don't know if let's have that. Let's have those kind of clusters. If we have 100, 150, even if it's 1,000 barrels per day, you take care of that whole issue of importation coming to that particular level. Another thing, the jobs you are creating. You're looking at the lower part of that production. A whole lot of people are going to benefit from byproduct, from other auxiliary industries that will also get into servicing or using the product coming from here. So we need more of. Not every conglomerate can afford a Dangote kind of money, or can be able to pull an EU or pull the foreign investor to come and drop that amount of billions here. But internally, we can get this.
I think also.
All right, Doctor. Before you make your input, let's go on a short break now, and we'll return. When we return, Dr. Idahosa will make his input on the issue of local production of oil in Nigeria. Stay with us.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
You know, statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And,
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and the discussion has been on local production of oil in Nigeria. We're looking at the state of refineries in Nigeria. What should be done to ensure that these refineries are working the way it should? We still have Chooks and Idahosa are here with us in the studio.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make was the fact that the issue of modular refinery is not something that is just starting. Obasanjo actually started to issue that license during his second tenure. I remember vividly that day, that time, about 6 or thereabout licenses were issued, and Orjius Okalu was actually one of the beneficiaries of those licenses. Now the question was, why did the modular refineries not work? There were issues of extant legislations that actually empowered NNPC as a sole monopoly to sell petrol. So what the laws empowered them to do was that those who got a license were supposed to process crude for export. When we have a market need for it here. So you're looking at it, you're going to refine the product here and sell to other people. But you cannot sell within Nigeria because NNPC had the monopoly. We're hoping that those rules and those laws, now by the Petroleum Industry Act, would have been broken such that people can produce petrol and sell them locally if there's a market here. So if I produce petrol in Benin, I don't need to ship it abroad to sell. I can buy the crude from Warri and refine it in Benin and then sell it in my neighborhood and make my profit. So I think that democratization is what is required, and that's what happened with a telephone that you mentioned, that people could really, NITEL monopoly was broken, and therefore these people could operate with free hands. But I think we are in the right timing now, as far as I'm concerned, with the Petroleum Industry Act, which has empowered that other people can actually refine products and sell. So if that happens, like we are seeing already, about 5 modular refineries have started operation. I learned last week Benin Modular Refinery was requesting about 300,000 barrels of crude daily to be processed. Now, once all these are aggregated, and then of course the law of market, which is supply and demand, we play in the industry, and we could actually get petrol cheaper, and the industry can become much more robust.
All right, let me have your concluding thought now as we wrap up. The minister has given indication that the 4 refineries will be in top gear given the end of 2024. Are you optimistic, Chooks, that this will be the game changer, and then you have the issue of Dangote refinery? So looking at these 2 factors, what will be your recommendations as we wrap up?
Okay, for my recommendation, I am not a believer in government doing business. I believe government should strictly focus on policy, admin, minister thing, but I am not a believer in government doing business. Why? Because government money is nobody's money. Over the years, we've shown that. So let the private sector, let private individuals, private companies handle that set of business and make it return or pay tax to government.
A good example.
So you can hold somebody responsible. If the business fails, you pay what you owe to the bank. So if the business fails, what happens? Somebody will write off government bills.
Idahosa, what's your take? He said government has no business in business.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, but I think government can do business if we are serious with ourselves, and I think that's just for it. I have seen other nations doing business, and then it's prospering. If it can prosper as well, it can prosper. And I think what we just need to do is to create the right incentive. Now, there are too many free money around us as a people, and those things have to stop. If NNPC is promising that they want to refine this thing, they must do it transparently. and then they must be able to make a business case for it. And that is important. It's not just to give us a promise that refineries are going to work. We have heard this over and over and over, and it has not worked. We hope this time that this will not just be mere rhetoric, it will be backed up with a whole lot of activity and actions that by the end of the year, we can actually see it working and producing refinery and selling oil and not making losses, but making profits like every other state-owned resources in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and other places.
All right, we're out of time. Gentlemen, I must appreciate you for your time. I call both of you the wise men today. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this subject.
That title is too big for me.
You earned it anyway. All right, on that note, we'll call it a wrap on Early Exchange. Don't forget that this discussion continues on our social media platform and on our YouTube page at Souk News. You can share your view on the issue we've discussed today. The conversation continues because Early Exchange will continue to get bigger and better. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.